along to our rebranded podcast, Flat Out with myself, Jishnu.
Hello.
And myself, Max. And today we'll be going through the Dutch Grand Prix.
Wait, what about the Belgian one?
The Belgium Grand Prix? We don't talk about that.
What do you mean? We had George Russell's first podium. We had Verstappen's win on the unofficial home Grand Prix. Why do we not talk about it?
Yeah, that's literally about it. And I heard it was just raining, that's all.
Yeah, well, let's move on to the Dutch Grand Prix then. It's the newest addition to the Formula 1 calendar, isn't it? And what a track it was. Hennel, why don't you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, you're very right. It is the newest addition to this year's calendar, but F1 isn't really new to it. There has been a lot of racing here in the past, but the last race that occurred here was 1985. But after a 36-year sabbatical, Formula 1 returned back to the Netherlands and to race here at Zandvoort. And I have to say, the fans did not disappoint. Look at them, throughout free practice, throughout qualifying, and throughout the race, everyone who was there was living their life. I think these two, like both the Belgian Grand Prix and the Dutch Grand Prix, have had great fans. But anyways, let's talk more about the track itself. It was a fairly short track with lap times about 1 minute and 10 seconds at the quickest. And there were 14 corners, out of which 10 were right turns and 4 were left, which is reminiscent of NASCAR with only left corners. I think one of the most interesting aspects of this track was that the track actually featured 2 banked corners. For those of you who don't know what banked corners means, it means that the tracks actually are at an angle and they are inclined upwards, and that actually helps the car corner at a faster speed, but more on that later. So turns 3, which is the Hugenholtz corner, and turns 13/14, which are the Nameless corner and the Arie Luijendijk corner, are actually banked, with turn 3 being 19 degrees and turn 3 and 4 being 18. I think it was a great track, and the banking actually provided quite a bit of action because it allowed overtaking on the outside as well as the inside.
So with this banked track, at different angles, how does it affect the cars? What makes it different from other tracks then?
That's a very good question, Max. So, let's take a second and let's dive into the technical aspects of the car. On a normal road, on a normal flat surface, when your car is going straight and when it's cornering, all of the cornering force is actually, provided by the friction between the wheel and the surface. However, when it comes to banking, there's an additional force which allows the cars to turn, which is called centripetal force. Now, centripetal force is actually dependent on the downforce that a Formula 1 car creates when it's moving through the air. If we were to look at a free body diagram, we'll insert it over here for those of you who are wondering as well. You will see that there's actually an angle created between the car and the normal of the reaction force. And this is actually the centripetal force that we're talking about over here, pointing towards the center of a circle. So because there's an additional centripetal force, we'll see that the force for the cornering increases. With this, the cars can actually travel with a lot more speed into a corner. So now if you were to plug these increased values for force and velocity into the formula F equals to mv square over r, we'll see that the radius for the turn actually also increases. This means that the cars that are going on the outside will actually be able to travel faster than the cars that are going on the inside of the bank. And that is how these cars are actually able to overtake on the outside. However, being a banked corner doesn't mean that the only overtaking that happens is on the outside, because if you're a good driver, then you can also overtake on the inside if you're able to balance between braking and accelerating.
Yeah, and actually wait, apart from all these technical jargon and fancy gobbledygook, wasn't it just so lovely to see these F1 cars turn at such sharp angles and make these brilliant overtakes?
Yeah, indeed it was. So, after all what Henny has mentioned, if you guys still couldn't understand it, basically it just meant that with the bank corner, drivers can actually take a wider line at a faster speed. And so that's why we actually saw so many overtakes that were done on the outside. Not just on one driver, not just on one occasion, but on a few occasions, which makes the race really interesting because it's not something that we always see, whereby drivers take overtake on the outside line, right? Normally they do it on the inside line. That's the norm in racing that we normally see. So yeah, that was the analysis of the Zandvoort circuit, being such a new circuit. In fact, yeah, a new one in the F1 calendar. There were definitely a lot of shenanigans going around throughout the race weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, starting right from the first practice sessions, we were seeing retirements from Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz even had a big crash, and just drivers were just going off left, right, and center. And some even had engine retirements and engine failures and all those things. So it was really interesting to see, how these cars were handling, and not just the cars, but also the drivers, were handling and adapting to the new track on the calendar. But let's start with qualifying maybe. That's where a lot of the action happened, right?
Yeah, qualifying actually was where we saw one of the most actions actually throughout the race weekend. So as we've seen in qualifying, both Williams actually crashed out and both drivers actually mentioned that they were struggling in the windy conditions in this part of the year in Netherlands, and they both kind of pushed too hard a bit, so they lost control. Fortunately, George Russell managed to, nurse his car back to the pits and inspect for damage, which fortunately there wasn't much of. But unfortunately, the same can't be said for Latifi, who had a massive shunt around a corner. Yeah, and they had to actually retire him and, repair his car to get ready for the race.
And both crashes actually led to red flags, right?
Yeah, both crashes did lead to red flags, which was a massive annoyance to many drivers, especially Verstappen, who was the obvious home crowd there. It disrupted many of the drivers' flying laps, so they couldn't really set the best qualifying time that they could. And yeah, speaking about the disruptions, we had a very close call between Vettel and Mazepin. I'm sure you guys saw, where Mazepin actually blocked Sebastian Vettel, who was on his flying lap, and because of that, I think he got a penalty for blocking away and actually causing a grave danger, not just to himself and Vettel, but also to the other drivers who were around him at that time.
Yep, and actually it was Mazepin and Mick Schumacher, right, on the incident. And I think Mick Schumacher actually went in the press afterwards to say, oh, Vettel was the last person I would have wanted to block, and it just happened that, they were both fighting for position in that tricky last corner, trying to get their cleanest lap in. And another driver that actually lost out was Lando Norris, right?
Yeah, he was. I felt very sad for him because of, as Max mentioned, the two Williams crashing out. First, we had George Russell, who brought out the first red flag, after which Lando Norris came out for his out lap. And while that was happening, Latifi crashed out and brought out the second red flag, which meant that Norris couldn't improve on his time and he was knocked out, along with Perez, in a similar case in Q1. So these were like proper midfielder battles, the top 5 in the championship for drivers, knocked out because of just, coming out too late. So there was some strategical errors there from the teams, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And, all the drama in free practice and in qualifying, they led us to believe that, the race was going to be one of the craziest races of the season. We were going to see red flags and safety cars and just total chaos. But that so did not happen.
Yeah, it didn't really happen at all. I mean, we even saw Giovinazzi qualifying P7, equaled his best qualifying start. But yet, we couldn't see him in the points, did we? So, why don't you run us through what happened during the race?
Yeah, so lap 1, turn 1, nothing much really happened. Just everyone got a clean start. I think Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton especially got really good starts off the line, and compared to Valtteri Bottas, they were just miles ahead going into turn 1. And Max Verstappen, with his superior pace through the first sector of the Zandvoort track, managed to just fly off into the distance, and I think that was about it for the rest of the race between the two drivers at the front. And there was some action further behind. I think Alonso was, causing a bit of some drama and some chaos when he was going off track and throwing up some dirt, and he made some really fast moves, back onto the track, almost knocking off George Russell's front wing. And there was this brilliant move that he did around the outside on turn 3, which was nice to see. And, well, apart from that, there wasn't really much going on for the rest of the race. It was supposed to be a strategic race it was supposed to be a race where we are supposed to focus on strategy, and, Mercedes, with two drivers at the front as compared to Red Bull, was supposed to, play their cards right and try and make some places on Max Verstappen, but none of that happened. You know, none of the strategy came to any positive outcomes for them.
Yeah, because as we saw, every time Mercedes put off a strategy to try and get a step ahead of Red Bull, you know, Red Bull reacted in exactly the same way. Every time Hamilton pitted, Verstappen would pit as well for a fresh set of tires, and they try to use Bottas as a wingman, you know, to try and cover Max off. But you know, obviously that didn't work. You know, Bottas was on much older tires, and Max just literally breezed past Bottas easily, no kick at all, and yeah, so strategy didn't play out that well for Mercedes, but it really was a fantastic weekend for Red Bull in terms of strategy.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be the devil's advocate here, but I wouldn't really say that Max breezed past Bottas, because I think Bottas did a decent ass job in blocking Verstappen a bit, because he did, you know, allow Hamilton to catch up to him, and I think for about a lap and a half, Verstappen was stuck behind Bottas, and when he did overtake finally, it was on rubber ground. So I guess it was it did help Hamilton a bit, because then after Verstappen overtook Bottas, Hamilton was able to catch up, and you know, he was in the DRS zone for a bit. But then again, I think there was a huge strategical error from Mercedes in putting Hamilton on the mediums and expecting him to go all the way to the end, you know, there's 30 odd laps. And I think it was a masterclass from Red Bull calling their bluff and then going on to hards during, I think it was lap 44. So I think they did learn from, I think it was a British Grand Prix, where they did take their time to pit, and I think they lost the lead in the end. So I think good on them.
Yeah, and just a sec, did you say Bottas did a decent ass job?
Yeah, why?
Alright, I didn't know we were using this kind of language in our podcast, but let's move on very quickly. So Bottas, I think one of the biggest events was, you know, Bottas' fastest lap at the end of the race, where he got pitted and then he didn't know he was going to do the fastest lap, and there was a whole lot of confusion over there, right?
Yeah, even Valtteri called him. No, not Valtteri. James called him. Yeah, as soon as we heard the radio, we all knew what was going to happen.
Valtteri is James.
Yeah, Valtteri is James. He immediately got called by the team to, you know, stop the flying lap to steal the fastest lap. In all honesty, I think, you know, Bottas, he thought that he was on a fresh set of tires, and the team just wanted them to steal the fastest lap away from Verstappen. But I guess it wasn't the case, because they had Hamilton in mind. Hamilton was their priority. You know, they wanted to snatch as much points as possible for him, and that's why they actually pit Hamilton instead, and then he went on to get the fastest lap in the end.
Yeah, honestly, I still don't understand why they decided to pit Bottas, because there really was, like, 3 laps away from the end, there really wasn't a need to. I mean, I know I was complaining about vibrations, but I wouldn't call it precautionary.
Yeah, it wasn't anything severe or whatsoever, and it kind of felt like false hope for Bottas, you know, giving him that fresh set only to be told that, oh no, you're not going for the fastest lap. So I guess kind of not really a big disappointment, but yeah, general disappointment for Bottas, knowing that he could have gotten an extra point, but he was denied by his team. And speaking of teams, yeah, we do. As we are recording right now, we've just received notifications that there will be some team reshuffling for the next F1 season, 2022 season. So let's see what this notification is then.
Yep, I was about to say, because I interrupted by saying but, because I literally saw my phone flash up and it said that there was a post from F1, and when I went to see it, lo and behold, it was Bottas moving to Alfa Romeo.
What a great coincidence.
I think it is. I mean, the cards, we've, I guess, played the cards right by recording this so late at night for us. But yeah, okay, wait, so can I just put a pause there then? Does this mean that because Bottas already knew that he's going to be signed for Alfa Romeo, he didn't give a damn? I have minded my language this time. He didn't give a damn about listening to team orders. So, because he was warned twice before he had 2 purple sectors. And he did ask why did we pit if it wasn't for the fastest lap. So I think Bottas is trying to go on a rebellious streak now, and I hope he carries it on to us throughout the year because it will be fun to watch.
Yeah, and well, reprising my role as a Mercedes defendant, I think if you listen to the actual full radio exchange, Bottas was setting the two fastest sectors. You know, he went purple in sector 1 and sector 2. And then I think the Valtteri's James, please abort your fastest lap radio message came on. And Valtteri just replied, "Oh, I was just having some fun." And I think that was hilarious for him to like say that because, you know, it's kind of signifying that, you know, maybe the contract is signed with Alfa Romeo already. And yeah, it was really interesting. And I think if you look at the timings also, it's quite clear that Bottas didn't intentionally go and set the fastest lap because he was nearly like 2 seconds slower than Lewis Hamilton's fastest lap on the final lap. So yeah, but yeah, it sent the driver market rumors into overdrive, and well, I think it's clearly been confirmed now that Bottas is going to Alfa Romeo. And what does this mean for the rest of the drivers on the grid? You know, especially George Russell.
So let's see. Kimi Räikkönen announced this week. Well, last week.
I just said George Russell, and he started with Q.
Fine. Okay, well, so let's see. George Russell. So that means since Kimi has retired and Bottas is going into Alfa Romeo, that means Russell will most likely go to Mercedes. And that leaves an empty seat at Williams then. So who will it be for?
Which will be filled by Alex Albon. Oh. Also, can I just say that I did some detective work here, and I found out that Alex Albon's girlfriend only follows George Russell and Williams. And I think that's because George Russell is leaving Williams to give Alex Albon the seat. And also I did some more detective work. You know, I put on my detective cap. And I was looking at a interview that Toto Wolff did when he was talking about the empty seat at Williams. And he said that there's an empty seat at Alfa Romeo, which we knew because, you know, Raikkonen is leaving, and at Williams. So as of, you know, that was Thursday. So as of Thursday, there was actually no empty seat at Williams. But I think he did accidentally, you know, confirm that George Russell will be moving to Mercedes.
Yeah, and I think it all started with, you know, the press asking questions about Albon's future. And I think Christian Horner also mentioned that, you know, he was hoping that Mercedes don't deny Albon the opportunity to return to F1. And I thought that was a bit, you know, strange coming from Christian Horner, the guy who actually robbed Alex Albon of his opportunity in F1 after firing him. But it was interesting, and it's also going to be the first time, you know, if Albon does actually go to Williams, it's going to be the first time that Red Bull actually loan out a driver to another team since they did Carlos Sainz in 2017 to Renault. And well, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not Albon is going to continue and stay in the Red Bull driver program, or is he going to, you know, leave and try out other stuff, you know, like Mercedes want him to. Because obviously Mercedes don't want to have, you know, a Red Bull driver in their race seat, you know, driving their Mercedes engine while still being, you know, a Red Bull driver. So I think it's really fair that, you know, Toto Wolff expects Alex Albon to leave from the Red Bull driver program if he wants to join Williams. But Alex Albon is not the only driver in contention for that Williams seat, right?
Yeah, Alex Albon definitely isn't the only one. We have Nick De Vries and another ex F1 driver, Stoffel Van Dorn. They both recently won the Formula E Grand Prix, and this is actually an opportunity for them to come into Formula One. Even Toto Wolff mentioned that, you know, they might have plans to actually bring them over. So we'll see actually what the outcome of this you know, team reshufflement, how will it turn out.
Yeah, and I know I'm a bit hopeful, but, you know, I am hoping that Hülkenberg is also thrown into the mix because, let's be honest, last year when he did return, he was so good, you know, and I hope that he does, you know, get a chance to race in F1 again, and even if it's at Williams, I think it will still be in F1, so I can't wait to see who is going to be, you know, filling up that empty seat at Williams for now. Is it going to be someone new, someone we know? Exciting times.
Yeah, I mean, Nico Hülkenberg, one of the drivers that I feel definitely deserves a podium, but, you know, didn't even have an opportunity to get a podium in his... he had an opportunity, but he just, you know, the cards weren't right, and, you know, he just didn't get the podium throughout his whole 200 plus races career. And yeah, so if you're looking at the Williams seat, there are plenty of people in contention, you know, ranging from junior drivers to Formula E champions to, you know, ex-F1 drivers like Alex Albon and Nico Hülkenberg. So that's definitely interesting. But here's another, interesting thing. If you look at the comments on Aston Martin's Instagram post, the Aston Martin F1 team, of course, you might see that, some people are commenting about why is Aston Martin letting go of Sebastian Vettel. And, well, nothing has been confirmed as of yet, but there seems to be a lot of rumors about, Aston Martin parting ways with Sebastian Vettel, and that they're going to be looking for a new driver. And that's a bit strange and also very interesting. Because if you look at Sebastian Vettel's performances this year in the Aston Martin and, just the way that he's been able to gel in with the team, you wouldn't expect them to, part ways with one another after just one season together. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens over there and whether or not that rumor has any truth to it.
And yeah, that concludes the driver market rumors and rumors off the track we have for the weekend. And lastly, we've come to our most saddening and sad point of Kimi retiring. After 20 long years in Formula One, he finally announced that he'll be retiring at the end of the season and will not be continuing on. That he has other plans instead for himself, and he's interested to go somewhere else. So, Mr. Iceman, known for so many things, from his stints in Monaco, to his epic race wins, to his championship in 2007, and all those drama. Kimi, you'll be really missed by every one of us. And if you guys don't know who Kimi is, then
you probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast.
Yeah, you definitely won't be listening to this podcast at all. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? I kind of wanted Kimi to retire like a couple of years ago already, because he's had a great run in Formula One. He had a great stint at Ferrari, and it just felt like he was going on for a bit too long. And there were a lot of young drivers coming up the ranks, and I would have loved to see them on track. But now that Kimi's actually retiring, it is a bit sad to see, and I'm definitely gonna miss all the team radio exchanges, those iconic radio exchanges, and just the Iceman's behavior himself.
Kimi, you will not have the drink.
Yeah.
Hey, steering wheel and gloves.
Gloves and steering.
Steering wheel and gloves, Mark.
Hey, steering wheel.
Is the drink connected?
No, the drink is not connected, Kimi.
No, but is the drink connected or not?
No, Kimi, you will not have the drink. I repeat, you will not have the drink. Okay, Kimi, box, if you can hear me.
Can you hear me now?
No, negative. I can't hear you.
But I can hear you, no?
Yeah, box, if you can hear me.
You still don't hear me?
No, I can't hear you.
You now hear me?
No, negative.
But you answer still.
Hilarious.
Iconic Kimi. And more than just the iconic radio, Kimi was also known for his silence on the grid and by the drivers on the grid. So when Vettel and Ricciardo were asked what they missed most about Kimi, there was an awkward silence. And that's what Vettel and Ricciardo said, that yes, it's the awkward silence that is going to be missed. And yeah, his impressive people skills, especially displayed during the PR events, was just too good. And I think that is what we'll all be missing, about Kimi Räikkönen when he leaves.
Yeah, so he's crossing the finish line in his career in Formula One. And I think it's time for us to cross our finish line on this podcast. See you guys next time.
Bye.